It was November 12, 1942 in Richmond, California. The cold morning fog hung low over San Francisco Bay, muffling the clang of hammers and the hiss of torches. A crowd of thousands gathered by the waterfront, eyes fixed on a massive cargo vessel, the SS Robert E. Peary. She stood for 141 feet long, weighing more than 28 million pounds, poised to slide into the bay through the gates of Permanente Metals Corporation, Yard Number 2. But this was no ordinary launch. The ship had been assembled in just 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes, a feat that once took skilled craftsmen half a year. The crowd was not made up of seasoned shipwrights or naval engineers, but ordinary Americans, farmers, housewives, teachers, and clerks who, weeks earlier, had never touched a welding torch. As flashbulbs popped and reporters scribbled, Vice Admiral Emery Land stood silently, realizing he was witnessing something revolutionary. This wasn't merely a ship being launched, it was a new kind of warfare, fought not on battlefields but in factories. The SS Robert E. Peary symbolized a transformation. A new industrial revolution was being born, one measured not in strategies and speeches, but in production statistics. Behind this miracle stood one man who refused to accept limits, Henry J. Kaiser, a builder of dams turned shipbuilder, who believed that with the right methods and people, the impossible could be achieved. What the crowd saw that day was more than a launch, it was the sound of the future, echoing through fog and steel, whispering that America's greatest weapon would not be bombs or bullets, but innovation. The story began 2 years earlier. December 27, 1940, Henry J. Kaiser, then 58 years old, signed his first shipbuilding contract. Known for constructing massive dams like Hoover and Grand Coulee, Kaiser had never built a ship nor managed a shipyard. Yet he promised the U.S. Maritime Commission that he would deliver 30 cargo ships for Britain. Within 2 years, the old shipbuilding establishment scoffed. Kaiser, they said, he's a construction man, not a shipwright. He'll sink before he sails. But Kaiser saw things differently. To him, ships were just floating assemblies of steel, and steel could be fabricated the same way cars rolled off Ford's assembly lines. He sent his trusted engineer, Clay Bedford, to Detroit to observe Ford's process. Bedford watched chassis glide past stations, each worker adding one small piece until a car emerged at the end. When he returned to California, he brought with him a radical idea. What if ships could be built like cars? Traditional shipbuilders balked. They relied on rivets, millions of them painstakingly installed by teams of skilled men. Kaiser proposed welding instead, faster, cheaper, and stronger. But it was untested on such a massive scale. Vice Admiral Emery Land called the idea reckless. Welding a ship that size, he warned, it'll crack like glass. But desperate times demanded desperate innovation. German U-boats were sinking. Allied cargo ships faster than America could replace them. Britain was starving for supplies. With no better alternative, Land reluctantly approved Kaiser's plan. And so, on the muddy flats of Richmond, California, a shipyard unlike any before began to rise, not from tradition, but from imagination. Kaiser's shipyard looked nothing like those of old. There were no narrow slips or endless rows of riveters. Instead, it resembled an automobile factory: open spaces, modular work areas, and rail systems to move massive steel sections from one point to another. Giant cranes loomed overhead, capable of lifting entire ship sections into place. Veteran shipbuilders visited and shook their heads. It violates every principle, they muttered. But even they could not deny that it worked. Kaiser's greatest innovation wasn't machinery, it was people. He recruited anyone willing to work: farmers, teachers, secretaries, high school graduates, and grandmothers. They came by the thousands, eager to help the war effort. Training didn't take years, it took weeks. Each worker learned one specific task: welding seams, aligning plates, or fitting bulkheads. The process was simple, repetitive, and astonishingly effective. By breaking down complex shipbuilding into small, teachable steps, Kaiser transformed ordinary Americans into an industrial army. Productivity skyrocketed. The first Liberty ship took 197 days to complete. The next took 169, then 128. By spring 1942, ships were rolling out in just 70 days. Traditional shipyards couldn't compete. Speed, Kaiser said, is our weapon. He pushed for parallel construction, building different sections of the ship simultaneously. One crew worked on the hull, another on the engine, another on living quarters. When ready, cranes dropped entire modules into place like puzzle pieces. The Navy called it madness. Kaiser called it progress. And as one ship after another slid into the bay, it became clear he was rewriting the rules of industry. By mid-1942, competition burned fiercely between Kaiser's shipyards. His son Edgar Kaiser managed the Oregon yards while Clay Bedford ran Richmond. Each tried to outdo the other. In September, Oregon stunned the nation by completing a ship in 10 days. Richmond vowed to go faster. At midnight on November 8, 1942, more than 1,000 workers gathered under floodlights at the Richmond yard. Their mission to build the SS Robert E. Peary in record time. Prefabricated sections stood ready, the bow, stern, cargo holds, and engine room lined up like dominoes. Teams of welders, fitters, and crane operators worked in rotating shifts 24 hours a day. Coffee flowed, sparks flew, and the ground trembled with the rhythm of industry. By the fourth day, the Peary stood complete. On November 12 at 3:30 p.m., the great vessel slid down the ways into San Francisco Bay. The crowd roared, cheering through tears and laughter. Vice Admiral Land, once Kaiser's fiercest critic, stood in stunned silence. 6 months ago, he said softly, "I would have called this impossible. Henry Kaiser has made traditional wisdom obsolete." Word of the record spread worldwide. Newspapers dubbed it the 4-day miracle. But for Kaiser, it wasn't about fame, it was about proof. Proof that efficiency, innovation, and teamwork could achieve the unthinkable. Soon, shipyards across America adopted his methods. By 1943, the average Liberty ship took just 42 days to build. America was producing 3 ships a day faster than German submarines could sink them. The tide of war had begun to turn. Kaiser's shipyards became cities of industry. At their peak, they employed 200,000 workers, including 40,000 women. The now iconic Rosie the Riveters. For the first time, women donned hard hats and welding masks, proving that courage and skill knew no gender. African Americans, too, found opportunity. Thousands joined integrated crews, earning fair wages and learning trades that would change their lives long after the war. "We're not just building ships," one worker said, "we're building a future." Communities blossomed around the shipyards. The city of Richmond grew from 23,000 residents to over 100,000 in just 3 years. In Oregon, Kaiser built Vanport City, a planned community housing, 40,000 workers and their families complete, with schools, stores, and recreation halls. And when workers fell ill or were injured, Kaiser refused to let them fend for themselves. He created an employee medical program, the foundation of Kaiser Permanente, now one of America's largest healthcare systems. By the end of 1945, Kaiser's shipyards had produced nearly 1,500 vessels, more than a quarter of America's wartime fleet. Nationwide, 2,710 Liberty ships carried the supplies that fueled victory tanks, jeeps, food, and ammunition. They were boxy, plain, and slow, but they were enough to win the war. Admiral Chester Nimitz would later remark, "Japan's generals believed they could sink ships faster than we could build them. They didn't count on Henry Kaiser." Innovation, not just bravery, had won the day. The war ended, but Kaiser's revolution had only begun. His modular construction methods became the blueprint for modern industry, from shipyards in Japan and South Korea to prefabricated housing and even aerospace design. The Liberty ships, designed to last only 5 years, proved tougher than anyone expected. Many served for decades. To the SS Jeremiah O'Brien in San Francisco and the SS John W. Brown in Baltimore still sail today as floating museums, living reminders of a time when America built miracles from steel. Kaiser's true legacy wasn't just in ships, it was in people. He showed that ordinary men and women, when organized, trusted, and inspired, could achieve what experts deemed impossible. He shattered the myth that innovation belonged only to specialists. When Admiral Nimitz looked back years later, he said, "The real secret of victory wasn't courage alone, it was the relentless power of innovation at home." Henry Kaiser's story became a testament to a timeless truth: limits are illusions. Tradition is not truth. When people believe they can, and are given the tools to do so, they can remake the world. From his first contract in 1940 to the Robert E. Peary's launch in 1942, to the last Liberty ship in 1945, Kaiser didn't just build ships, he built proof. Proof that ingenuity, courage, and faith in the ordinary could achieve the extraordinary. And every time a modern ship slides into the sea, somewhere in that thunder of steel and water echoes the voice of history. The impossible has just been done.